Being in a relationship with a narcissist is about as disorienting as being in a house of mirrors. Nothing makes sense. So when the narcissist walks away, you think you've made it to the final discard. But then you remember you're in a house of mirrors. And what you thought was a clear path to the exit sent you face first into another mirror. And here the narcissist is back around again. Because they've always got one foot out the door, you're left wondering whether the exit in front of you is real or just another illusion. If you can relate to this at all, there are 5 things you really need to know about the narcissist's final discard. So the first thing you need to know is that discards are sometimes nothing more than a form of manipulation. Some narcissists will use discards or threats of walking away from the relationship simply to put you in your place, to get you to behave the way they want you to behave. And they may actually even walk away and then come back around. So it's very beneficial for the narcissist that you believe that they can and will walk away at any minute. Because if you don't want them to walk away, you're going to change the way you're behaving. And you're probably going to try to follow their rules. And even if you know it's against your best interest, there's something called a trauma bond that takes hold in these relationships. They can get us to act in ways that we wouldn't act otherwise. So it's near impossible to know whether you're dealing with the final discard or a pure manipulation attempt. And the weird truth is, the narcissist usually doesn't know either. We'll get to more on why that is soon. So if you're new here, my name is Christina. I'm a narcissistic abuse recovery coach, and I put out videos to help you unpack the confusing experience of having any kind of relationship with a narcissist. In these videos, I like to highlight comments from the comment section to help really drive the points home. And because sometimes there are just real gems in the comment section. So here's a comment from someone who has dealt with the manipulative discard. I was just discarded yesterday after I traveled 30 minutes to her town to pick her up. Then she was even texting me to see if I'd come back. So this commenter was in a situation where the narcissist really wanted things to go their way. And so she threatened to discard, and it backfired on her because that person was done after that. Have you ever been in that situation? Let us know in the comments if you have. It's super, super common when you're dealing with narcissists because, again, they always have one foot out the door. So another thing you really need to know about the final discard is that even if it's final, there won't be closure. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news there, but it's true. When things end, no matter how it ends, no matter when it is, if a narcissist is involved, you're probably going to feel like something is left unsaid or undone. Or it's so confusing, you just can't make heads or tails of what happened. And so when the person comes back, you're more likely to take them back because you feel like they're going to give you some closure. But that never happens. The reasons why there's no closure is because the wounds that were there when you had a relationship with a narcissist as an adult, the wounds have always been there. And what's going on there is that they're triggering these wounds, and it's so much deeper than we even know. So we all have these inner conflicts that we're dealing with. And sometimes these things seem to go dormant as we go about our lives. We try not to dwell on negativity. But the narcissist comes along, throws a bomb, and awakens them. It becomes very different from any relationship that you've ever had before. And that becomes apparent very quickly. And because they awaken these wounds and then just walk out, there really is no closure. There you are with these open wounds you didn't know you had before, and you don't know what to do with it. And we want to hold that narcissist accountable, but they can't fix it even if they wanted to. And trust me, they don't want to. So here's a comment that highlights that lack of closure. We didn't even officially end it. We just stopped talking. He quit trying, so then I blocked him in a moment of anger. I feel really lost and hurt. I'm trying to go no contact, but I'm struggling not to seek closure. So this comment really encapsulates that closure trap. And this is one of the main reasons why people end up getting hoovered again, because they feel like so much is up in the air and there is no closure. And they desperately want that closure. So when the narcissist comes back, it feels like it's within reach. It feels like they can give it to you. But again, they can't. Even if they could, they wouldn't. Still, they'd be happy to let you believe that they can, but they cannot. So another thing you need to know about the final discard is that it has nothing to do with you. And I know this sounds like something nice that people say, and it can be really difficult to believe, especially when you're feeling bad and it feels so deeply personal. But I promise you it's true, and we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper now. Narcissists discard for so many reasons. They might discard because they fear exposure, because you've gotten too close, and maybe they know something's off about them, and they also know they're manipulating you. And so they get the sense that maybe you'll figure them out. And if you do, maybe you might expose them to others. So it's easier to discard you than to deal with any of that, for a narcissist anyway. They may also discard just because they got bored. So maybe the intensity of the love bombing phase has faded, and that type of infatuation always fades in a relationship. And that's really when love is supposed to kick in. But with a narcissist, that doesn't happen. So they look for another person to give it to them, another person that they can find that mutual infatuation with until that fades. And then they might be on to the next. And so if they discard for that reason, again, please understand that it has nothing to do with you. It's because the narcissist always needs a shiny new toy. It's because they get bored with people and things very easily, very quickly. So it doesn't matter what you would have done, they were going to get bored anyway. This is about them, not you. And so you might be wondering, what about narcissists who stay in relationships? And I get that question a lot. And really, what's going on here is it's not that much different from what happens when a narcissist discards. This is what I call a soft discard. So they will check out of the relationship emotionally, maybe physically, in all ways. And they'll keep the facade going, but they're not really there. And they might even be really abusive in this time. And because narcissists see things in black and white, they see you as either all good or all bad. In this moment where they're checked out, you're all bad. So please understand that even if a narcissist is staying in a relationship, that's not a net win for anyone, really. And if you're dealing with a recent discard and you're feeling bad, understand that this is not a position you would want to be in. As bad as it feels, it really is better to be on the other side than to be caught up in that mess, to be caught up in that unhappiness. Think about your unhappiest moments with the narcissist. And that's essentially what you would be signing up for a lifetime for. So again, plenty of reasons why a narcissist will discard. None of them have anything to do with you, even though they will tell you the reasons have everything to do with you. So another reason why you might feel like you don't have closure after a relationship with a narcissist is because maybe they gave you a really lame excuse for this relationship ending. So maybe you were together for years and they cite the reason for leaving this relationship as something they've known about you for as long as they've known you. Maybe it's even something that they claim to like about you in the beginning. I've heard this from a lot of you too. Or it's just something completely frivolous, like your hair color. It doesn't make sense, and so you end up ruminating over it because your mind wants to make sense of things. And you can really get stuck in this. So if you're in this place right now, I have a course that was basically designed for you. In this course, we look at rumination in a completely different way than you've ever seen it before. This course will challenge your beliefs about rumination and take you through exercises you're not going to see anywhere else. So if you're really struggling with this, I suggest you check out that course, the link in the description. Now let's look at some advice from the comments. A powerful clarifying line in this video is that the narcissist looks at the relationship as transactional. And to add to that, the transaction must be weighted heavily in their favor. Think of it that way, and many behaviors and attitudes will be more understandable. So now I want to talk about a mistake that so many of us end up making after a discard. Sometimes we try to use the intensity of the discard to gauge whether it's the final discard, whether that narcissist might be coming back around again. So for example, if the narcissist gave you a 3-day notice to vacate because they were leaving you for someone else, you might think that they wouldn't have the audacity to come back. Let me tell you, they have the audacity. Never underestimate the audacity of a narcissist. And so if the intensity of a discard isn't a good gauge of whether it's the final discard, then what is? So the thing that I found most reliable to tell whether the discard might be final is the smear campaign. If there's an intense smear campaign against you, the narcissist is really going on attack and trying to get you to lose credibility in other people's eyes. If they're doing that, they're probably done and not coming back. Now, I'll have to say also, this isn't the end game for every narcissist in every relationship with a narcissist. But if you have seen this, I would expect the narcissist is most likely not going to come back. So, going back to that level of cruelty we see in discards, I know many of you have had the experience here in the discard phase where you end up feeling like you didn't know this person at all because you see a different side than ever before. And it's really ugly, incredibly harsh, and cruel. And you find yourself wondering how they could have ever loved you at all. This happens because the narcissist lacks empathy. They don't care how their actions affect you, but you may actually see the cruelty increase with more discards. So if you've been discarded and hoovered more than once, every time you get to that discard phase, it might intensify. Because if the narcissist sees that they can treat you however, and you'll still come back, they're very likely to become more abusive. So keep that in mind if you've been discarded and are thinking of going back. It will only get worse. Also, there are times when the narcissist will discard for revenge. And I'm sorry to say, this doesn't even mean that it's final. And that, trust me, I've been there, can be hard to wrap your head around. But if you've discarded them first or publicly embarrassed them, they might come back and hoover you only to destroy you later. It's all calculated for the purpose of revenge. So, most of the time, aside from revenge, hoovers and discards are really just manipulation and they're about supply. But for revenge, that is when you see the narcissist being very calculated. And unfortunately, it's usually not obvious until after the fact. So tread lightly if you have discarded a narcissist or if you have injured them to the point where they might want revenge. There's a risk of real emotional danger in taking that narcissist back in this case. So definitely stand strong. So here's a comment from one of you dealing with one of those exceptionally cruel discards. This one not for revenge, this one just for being a narcissist, I guess. But it highlights that confusing time really well. I basically called the breakup with my ex, and in the process sent her several short audio recordings of her losing control at me, swearing, screaming, abusing, and just generally being completely dysregulated. Her response to this was a barrage of abusive text messages, and shortly thereafter called the police on me and had me served a restraining order. Unbelievably painful that after 14 months together, she could do this. I'm absolutely heartbroken. Would it be safe to assume that this is the one and only final discard? So now I'm going to turn that around on you. Based on what we've talked about here today, what do you think? Do you think that this is most assuredly the final discard? Or might this narcissist come back around? So earlier I mentioned something that might be a little bit confusing for some of you, and I'm going to clear that up right now. So I mentioned that the narcissist often doesn't even know if it's the final discard. And this is because they are fueled by instant gratification and they usually are not thinking long term. So, narcissists are known to be very impulsive. And that's often the fuel that's driving that discard. And again, the hoover on the other end if it comes. So, when they discard you, it's based on the feeling of being annoyed or bored in that moment. And since they have that black and white thinking, in those moments, you're all bad. So in most cases, they fully intend it as the final discard because they just think you were all bad. But then when they need supply again, they'll hoover you right back in without a second thought. Because again, it's all about what the narcissist wants and needs in that moment. And in that moment, they want supply. So then you become all good again. But don't fall for it because it is not long. History repeats itself, and it is not long before you become all bad in the narcissist's eyes again. But again, let me remind you, this is not about you. These are very strong patterns that they repeat with everyone. So, another important thing you need to know about the final discard is that it can be up to you. And I cannot stress this enough. You get to decide if it's a final. It doesn't matter how they discarded you. It doesn't matter if it was brutal. It doesn't matter if they blocked you everywhere. You still decide. And I know that in itself can be a little bit confusing, and you feel like you're in a place where you don't have power, but you do have more power than you know. Because look at all we've covered so far. There is very, very little assurance that the narcissist will not come back around again. Either they have to have found a supply that's working for them that they can feed off of indefinitely, or maybe they're among the narcissists who just don't hoover, they just don't go back to old supply. Or maybe they've gone to the extreme smear campaign, making it impossible to come back and hoover again. But apart from those three scenarios, nothing is off limits. So if you're in a place where you're not sure if the narcissist is going to come back around again, this is when you get to exert your power. This is when you get to block their numbers and block their social media. And you decide that you are done and you're moving on. This is where you decide that you're not going to wait to see if they come back around again. You are making a decision here and now. If there's nothing that person can do to get you back, whether they like it or not, they have discarded you for the last time. And now I coach people often who are in this place where they have recently been discarded and they're feeling the pull of that trauma bond. And they feel like the narcissist has some sort of hold over them. But that's actually not true. That is part of the illusion. You do still have more power and control over yourself and your actions. They would love for you to believe that they hold all the cards, but that is not the case. I'm not saying it's easy. The trauma bond can be a strong pull, but you can decide to work through it instead of taking that band-aid fix that you know is only going to make things worse for you in going back to the narcissist. The trauma bond really is a tricky thing, and it can send you deeper into that house of mirrors that you logically know you should be getting out of. But again, you hold more power than you know. So now let's look at an empowering gem from the comment section. I dumped him and I'm done. The super empath wins, LOL. 3 months, no contact. Goodbye, covert narcissist. I don't need closure. I got mine on my own. And I don't want to hear I'm sorry because I know it isn't true. That comment goes back to that lack of closure that we all feel. But this commenter made the decision to get it themselves. And that's a good choice because all a narcissist can give you is more lies and manipulation. But if you're having trouble making that decision that you are not going back, consider that there might be a trauma bond at play. The trauma bond is a reaction that makes you feel addicted to the toxic, abusive person. And if you're struggling, I suggest watching the video on the 7 stages of trauma bonding to see if you can relate. But before you go, if you like this video, hit the like button and I'll see you next time.